Ah. Okay, I see that I'm live, so I might as well just get the camera right on. Okay, greetings. So, as I found out often, when somebody goes live, if you're open to YouTube, you'll see things come up almost immediately. It takes like about 3 or 4 minutes for the emails to go out. Um, and hello, AJ, Madfinger, and Raksha. So, had a good time with the live stream on Saturday night with the alternative timeline. Actually spent an hour or so. Hello, Darcy. Reading some Anatoly Fomenko stuff that's online. Hello, Foxadre. And it's really interesting. It's kind of Rupert Sheldrake. He's the one who introduced the concept of morphogenetic fields, and that book was like 20 years old. I think it was written in like 1970s or the early 1980s. And so I had learned about the morphogenetic fields from a book called Gemstones and Vibrational Healing, and it had a lot of information. Matter of fact, the gemstone part of the book is at best half, and a lot of it is explaining how to make gem elixirs and how they work, and explanation of the chakras and the various rays, and it was a very pretty involved read, that book. But in that book and in a few other books by the author's name was Gurudas. He passed in the late 90s or mid 90s after he wrote a book about the New World Order. But anyway, there was a couple of allusions about the morphogenetic field, and as I read about it, I kind of was getting it, and then I did some meditations on it, and then I really got it. So at a time I was working at a spa, and somebody knew I was interested in it, and then it turns out they sent me a copy of Rupert Sheldrake's New Science of Life. And it was an edition that was printed 20 years later, so it had all the retractions of people who had attacked him when it first came out, because it doesn't fit into the normal way science approaches living things, especially. And reading it was terrible. I mean, in many ways, the way Rupert Sheldrake wrote his book was as a scientist, writing for other scientists who he knew were skeptics. So it is immensely pedantic, dry, detailed, lots of minutia, all the things that scientists pride themselves on. It was full of that kind of language. And for somebody who kind of already got it, it felt painful. It's like, boy, this is like teaching this concept to a robot that has like no idea of living systems. So now I had downloaded at least some of what was available of Anatoly Fomenko's work a while ago, and I couldn't find that. And part of a lot of what I read today was a breakdown of the duplications and things along that line. Now, of course, this is actually somewhat working into examining routines of the psyche. Hello, Oswald. Rupert Sheldrake's his popularity has skyrocketed, but Um, ju- I'm not sure that he's still all that well understood. Um, and it's interesting. I mean, 5 minutes before this went live, I just finished watching the last video that Joe from the Carolinas put up about the debate. I guess between like David Wilcock and CW or other people. And and I have to say, although I thought it was just like major thumbs up for positive momentum, engaging David Wilcock there the way he did. I just thought, that's the way to do it. This is people to people. That kind, that were getting in his face, and and he handled himself very well. I thought positive momentum handled himself very well, actually. And actually, to his credit, David Wilcock handled himself fairly well. I mean, for two people who were kind of who could have made it kind of ugly, it didn't get ugly. But I mean, if you go a year back or something, when Bill Ryan kind of first opened up that conversation, I knew Bill Ryan, so I kind of gave him a little bit of support about what he was doing, and hoping maybe he was going to not be the Bill Ryan that I knew, and I don't want to, Bill Ryan's Bill Ryan. If you know Bill Ryan, you know Bill Ryan. His, and if you know he was involved with Scientology, then you know that although you get clear, to get, put in, before they'll really teach you the good stuff in Scientology, if you decide to leave, they don't re-clear you. Okay, Vernon, I checked my Skype, but I don't see anything from you. Unless I haven't opened my Skype yet today. And part of routines also plays into it. In the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, I've had a sleeping routine that is really kind of a little out of sync with my normal routine, which is still kind of a musician's routine, going to bed somewhere between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. and getting up somewhere like around 2 p.m., 3 p.m. And sometimes earlier if I have other things to do. I mean, it's if I don't have anything pressing. Hello, Ellie. And so I've gotten into this routine, and it's still, I thought I was, going to break it last night, and I did not succeed. I still ended up going to sleep around 10 o'clock in the morning. But today I made sure that I set my alarm, and I got up, I don't know, I guess around 2:30, 2:40. So I got about, 4.5 hours of sleep. And I have to admit, I'm, feeling a little snoozy, but that's good. But I mean, it was just like this, the routine, that I had, was, again, I had a kind of a pattern. It wasn't everybody, it was far from other people's patterns, but it was my pattern, and that's all that matters. And it worked for me, and with the responsibilities that I have. And I guess yesterday I kind of got freaked out because I went to bed at 10 o'clock a.m. the morning before, and then I didn't get out of bed until 7:30 in the evening. That is just that's just a little bit odd a timing. I mean, again, it didn't clash with anything I had to do, but it just, I enjoy afternoons. I mean, I don't, usually if I see any part of the morning, it's at the beginning of the morning. Then I go into my cave and sleep, and but I get up while the sun is still in the sky, and waking up, getting out of bed at 7:30 p.m. was just like, oh no, this is not. I personally didn't like it. Not that there was any harm done. But what I'm getting, and of course I always have my exchanges with friends, clan brothers, and sorts like that. And apparently I'm not the only one experiencing a little bit of a routine disruption. And then, speaking then on the Saturday night stream about the timeline, and realizing that much of the chronology and even the history in many ways is a psychological routine, or a routine of our psyche. And even, I don't know where I was speaking. I think it was on a live stream. Sometimes I really have trouble parsing out what are the live streams, what are after streams, because there's a commonality, and they kind of blur together. And I don't feel the real need to delineate. I don't feel that there's any that. I don't really feel that's that important. It's just if I want to reference where it happened, I might have to say, well, it happened in a conversation or a dialogue in the past couple of days. So with regard to the timeline, my lack of sleep might show up a little bit in the stream tonight. But there seemed to be something. I guess everybody can hear me right. There seemed to be something about this lunar cycle, about looking at routines. And when we think about the moon in the twins, because I'll keep it that way. I mean, there is also the actual Dakini with her communication and tongues thing, but in this case, the twins. And sometimes when it comes to looking at routines, what you can kind of do is split into twins, and then you have one aspect of yourself that isn't in the routine. Look at the aspect of yourself that is in the routine. And it isn't necessarily, it's really an audit of ourselves, to just see, are we happy with this, or have we just fallen into a routine? Is this the, we've kind of, fallen into a pattern, a habit, and some habits can be very good. And a way of being. And it's, as a lot of things are shifting, sometimes maybe, there is that kind of review of ourselves, that, self-auditing. And again, auditing is about listening, about hearing. But anyway, so I was looking at the Anatoly Fomenko thing, and one of the things I did want to get straight, and I was able to get from that, was his proposed date for an actual historical, I guess, Christ figure. And he puts it from AD 1050, this isn't according to our calendar, AD 1050 to AD 1083. And we still have the 33 years in place, unless you put 1086. But somewhere like a 33 or 36 year lifespan that began in 1050. And so, I started this, again, supposition. This is just plain, because you got to kind of play with this material before it kind of might speak to you. And sometimes you just end up playing with it for a while until you get another piece. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there is something here. And and much of it was about the first, second, and third Romes, and how there's the similarities, and so it looks like what stretched over a lot of years might in fact be the same story told at least 2 times, and possibly 3. With the names being changed to protect the innocent. By the way, I hope some people. Let me look in the chat for a second. I hope some people checked out that video. I know I shared it. Hello, Kalendal. I walk. I shared it with some other friends of mine who are not part of our community, my GMOP community, and they were thank you, because she's a thoughtful person. She's an intelligent person too, and she's a few years older than me, so she, she's kind of old school, but still very vibrant. Goes out and cleans her horses, carries 50-pound bags of horse poo. She's robust. And so again, I don't know how many people listen to that, just to kind of have and get a little perspective, and even the place I was coming from. But what I'm really trying to do is square what we call the Dark Ages, and the Dark Ages are kind of that period where they call it because it seemed like everything went dark. There was no writing. Architecture seemed to ground to a halt. And I guess things like architecture and writing might ground to a halt if the years never existed. Kind of hard to find record of things happening in years that never happened. But I'm trying. What I got is almost as if like that the start of the Roman Church and some of those numbers. Okay, so we see like 305 A.D. and stuff like that. I'm going, something. The chances are that those numbers 305 after the death of Christ or after Christ could be quite applicable. But doing them from, let's say, 300 years after 1050 A.D. And so, that would make it like 1350 or 305. It's and then I'm starting to say, okay, there's like kind of almost like ways of where you can kind of take what before the Dark Ages, and then it seems like the Dark Ages, and find out that there's actually room almost for it to take like the AD stuff before we go dark, and then when we come back to light and you put them back together, and they can all fit into about closely 1,000 years. Hello, Meandering Mystic. And let me get back into my camera here. And so anyway, but to think like that is to break from a routine of how we think of chronology. And I've been really using the word chronology because I would like to use the word timeline, but there's all this other places that the word timeline now has an application for. Some of it, worth consideration, and some of it to me is fantasy. Although, I grew up on the Seth material. I'm very aware of how our conscious, I'm very much aware of alternative probabilities, possibilities, but it's just like, where is our power? Where is our agency? And our agency is in this timeline. Even if if there's a possibility to jump into another timeline, you're going to do it from your agency and power and, I guess, intent from this timeline. And then once you get to another timeline, that you're where you are is where you are. But anyways, that's why I'm using the word chronology instead of timeline. So that way nobody gets triggered into timeline timeline discussions in the chat. If we keep it to chronology, ancillary timeline discussions will not be triggered. So anyway, I'm in my camera, trusting as usual, the very competent moderators that fortunately have agreed to help me out, and So this way here I can kind of focus what I'm doing here. And then I'll peek in when I kind of need to take a breath. And also, you know, again, I'm kind of would be a little bit all over the place here with the, with the blue chicken stuff. This way I don't have to mention any names. If I say blue chicken, you know who's associated with the blue chickens. And if you don't, I can't imagine that you'd be in a community conversation and know who the blue chickens are. I think, of course, that was originally started by Cliff High. And, you know, I had done some commentary about it, and it's actually got me, you know, the views went up considerably for those. But I said kind of what I had to say, because, you know, what I have to say is what I have to say. And it seemed timely because there was a breakout. Bill Ryan got involved. Richard Dolan was talking about with Bill Ryan. And, you know, every once in a while I want to weigh in on conversations. But I also am aware that the waste of time that I think the blue chicken crowd is, to me, even dissing them is presencing them. It's using their names. It's making them somebody. Nothing makes somebody a nobody like not talking about them. So I'm not saying that others, we shouldn't be talking. You should do whatever you want. For me, talking about from where I sit and how energy works, and when you don't like something, to me, things I don't like are things I don't like to talk about. Unless they're grave things, like the way the world is run, the fictions of the world, not the earth, not the planet, the world, the construct. And so I just, even when I see people, ripping the blue chicken boys a new rectum, that it feels like, man, these guys are not worth the language. They're not worth the time. We presence them. We make them more alive, even when you are ripping at them, because by ripping we state that we have to state that they're there to rip them. And part of me is like, like Corey who, David what? And that's really how I feel. It's just like, oh please, maybe if we all ignore them enough, maybe they go away. And then I guess there's there's I have to wonder whether or not there isn't some of the, well, we're going to try and rescue the adulpates, the ones who were sucked into it. And it's just, when people are ready to stop a bad habit, they stop the bad habit. And I don't know that, when it comes to drugs and that includes alcohol, interventions can be very useful. I don't know that blue chicken fever requires an intervention, but that's why I don't do it. And others who do it, I'm not dissing them. I'm like, it's just, again, I have my magician's opinion about feeding energy into things, but one-on-one, especially face-to-face, like with Posmo, and I guess Robert Elder was with him, but Posmo was he was there, man. Positive Momentum. I don't want to just shorten his name. It was pretty awesome in many ways. I really was glad that was captured, and of course Joe from the Carolinas captured that. And then there's the whole ascension thing. And I would think, matter of fact, I could probably state with some assuredness that there will be no ascension before potty training has finished. And when I look at a lot of the blue chicken followers, it looks to me like potty training hasn't finished yet. Seriously. You have to be able to control your sphincters before one could even consider ascension. Now, of course, my concept of ascension, I'm using the word. To me, it's got some problems that I have no desire to really go into, because there is the whole process of having to get into our hearts where wisdom is, but I would say, let's say I'll just allow myself to play. I won't call it devil's advocate, against myself. Let's say we'll work with, okay, ascension could happen. It's there are mechanics for that. Those mechanics would be tied very much in with our consciousness, and our consciousness and our chakras are completely part of each other. Each chakric level is a state of consciousness, and the consciousness of what people call ascension would be minimally, and is the heart chakra, the wisdom chakra. And when you have people calling each other names, like Dark Alliance, haters, other highbrow, intellectual kind of language there, you see this clearly. The second and third chakra are still, doing some kind of, square dance together, switching partners and stepping on each other's toes. So when one sees the terrain, the general psychology, especially of the blue chicken crowd, ascension, please, really now, really. I mean, you don't know anything, then you know nothing about what that could mean. And that's what it is, and that's why, because the people who talk about, most people talk about it, or make it sound like it can come from the galactic center and transform everybody. That sounds like an overriding of free will to me. And I notice people, I don't hear the word free will a whole lot anymore. Free will used to be a big part of discussions. And I guess maybe one of the reasons why it dropped out of the conversation is maybe because of the, it's like, if we have free will, then I guess maybe some gust of enlightened breath from the galactic center, which Gnostics call the pleroma, or the fullness, pleroma, which means fullness, and also the source and original home of our own planetary animal mother, Sophia. She comes from there. And so it would just seem to me that, that to send a cosmic wind towards the earth that would immediately kind of override any of the work or lack thereof that people have done on themselves, it sounds like a gift that isn't really a gift. I mean, unless there's really some way that you can, that if that came, that suddenly everybody is no longer has those crazy inner dialogues, and they understand emotions are a data set. Well, actually, feelings are a data set. Emotions are when that data set goes into motion and starts releasing all kinds of neurochemicals. Because feelings usually don't release the neurochemicals. You can feel them in your gut, you can kind of sense them, but they haven't started moving. They're communicating. But once they kind of get hooked in with the mind and start producing pictures and conversations that never happened in our that occur in our heads with people, and we start getting fired up, we start releasing the neurochemicals and change our blood chemistry. Just, you know, as assuredly as taking a hit on a bong or taking some other kind of medication. That's emotion. And so, and then even in the last Connecting Consciousness with Simon Park, somebody had asked about the fact that there was going to be a galactic wave, and he was ruining the fact that it wasn't as strong as he thought it would be. And I don't doubt. Matter of fact, I have felt a wave hit us. There are other people who have felt it also, and it did have an effect on people who. I mean, I guess it had an effect on everybody, but it was kind of a booster. And so, you know, you get a few extra points, kind of like a curve on a test. Everybody got a few extra points beyond what they got on a test. But you know, if you pull in 55s, pulling a 60 or 65, it still isn't, you know, acing it. But so now let me address our community. You know, instead of me addressing the greater community where I don't have a chance to observe. And believe me, I observe. I participate. I mean, when I'm in live chats, I participate. But boy, do I observe. And I observe myself, too. You know, sometimes I'll put something out in a chat, and then I'll look at it, and I'll observe. Okay, what do we do here? And I had to admit, during the first lunar, when I 2 months back, 2 lunar cycles back, not the one before this one started, the one before that, and there were some pretty interesting things that happened in chat where I was, you know, happy with what I saw in chat, but I was also looking and go, where did that come from? That didn't exactly seem to originate from me. But that Dakini tag team, especially on the first lunar cycle, man, they were potent. They were really potent. Speaking about lunar cycles, I did get confirmation that, the next day from John Lash, and you know, Fox Adre had confirmed it, that the moon did rise in the twins, and so that would put the Bagalamukhi, as we were, you know, supposing. And he said a lot of people are feeling it. And so anyway, getting back to our community is, to me, clearly doing some really good work. There's been whatever that disappointing shift was for Simon. It wasn't disappointing. It wasn't disappointing for me to participate in, as being, you know, just another person in the community, one of the people who happens to do live streams, but still a member of the community. There was a shift, and there's fruit from that shift. And while I was doing my live stream Saturday night, I put out a piece of music, and everybody reacted really well to it because it's conveying something. It is. He captured something that's moving on the earth, but and in those receptive to this energy. And it was so exciting to hear music that, you know, because it's capturing a sense of what's going on. And so little by little, the art is showing up, and So we're going through kind of a renaissance, really. This is a renaissance period. And so there's going to be a soundtrack. There's going to be music that accompanies what goes on. There's going to be art that accompanies what goes on. It's the arts that are part of a wholesome growth. All right, I'm going to take a breather and see how things are going in the chat. Oh, yeah. Some conversation. I'm really. I mean, I'm glad I'm catching up on some of the, what was going on in the chat. But I'm also glad I wasn't watching it happen, or else I definitely would have got a little out of focus. Okay. Hello, Mari. Speaking of lunar, we are entering the 13th day. Okay. One of the reasons days have some applicability and even importance is there was the Fibonacci sequence unfolding of the days. So you get, the 2, 3, 5, 8, and then I guess 13 is the next number. And then the next number, I guess, would be 21. Hello, Niche. So, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed. Let me just address iWalk here. I really appreciate all the detail that you put into the chat regarding the moon, Foxadre. I really do. I mean, even if it goes over heads, including mine, even if I always have some utility of it. But even if it's like, okay, I got this information, I'm going to have to keep on applying myself more to make this. But near the head of the Archer, and near Saturn as well. And that's the other. I mean, for me to also to unpack that, I can go, okay, Archer, Saturn, full moon, and then go, and then take that data and then journey with it a little bit, do things with it, and then that's when the good stuff comes out. Yeah, we'll be Mad Finger. You put forward a good point there. Once the poses are handled, what do the people pulling down poses pants do next? Look for somebody else's pants to pull down? But I got to tell you, pulling down somebody's pants is good for views. People, because a lot of people undervalue themselves, they feel disempowered. So when one of us goes and pulls down the pants of somebody who has some, standing, there is often a lot of vicarious thrill from that. I certainly understand strategies. I'm pursuing a different strategy, and the fact that I have less subscribers than Joe or CW is because my strategy isn't as popular with a lot of for the more people. I'm really about quality rather than quantity. There has to be something, but I'm very happy with the way things are doing. I really, and so let's get back to our community. No, I was going to go to speak to iWalk for a second. iWalk, there was overtones in the music. It was a lot of music. Like I said, there certainly, by any meaning of, a clean, of a nice kind of clean recording. Yeah, it was rough, but it doesn't take away from it. And again, I guess my listener's ear, when it first starts out, you go, oh, this is a rough recording. Within 10 to 15 seconds, nobody cares really, including myself. That it, wasn't recorded with Sennheiser mics and, into a blah, blah, blah recording board or whatever. It worked. There's an emotion, there's a hugeness to it. There's a hugeness to what you created there. Hello, Robin. So I just want to, first, props for for composing it, and then props for getting it out. And as I think I shared on my Saturday Night Stream, but I'll just share here. This past Friday with Uncle Butchie, we did our first rehearsal of my song, the Go to Your Room, the Goob song. So that's getting part of Uncle Butchie's repertoire. I asked my drummer to bring over a small bass drum mic with a stand for it, because I have a few other mics to kind of capture a room sound. And I'm gonna try and because we're playing really good lately. So I really want to capture a few more Uncle Butchie songs, from the Butch Robbins, name of Butch Robbins band right now, of which I am the bass player, and Mark Webb is a drummer. And hopefully could be able to make some videos, because currently I just have out that Salt Creek and 40 Years Late, and 40 Years Late is a great song, but there were other really good songs, and those were recorded back in September, when Mark hadn't been with us for as long as, now he's been with us for a little over a year. Or maybe not quite a year, because I think what happened was I went to one of those one of Star Root's, get together where she has all kinds of people play, and it was just me and Butch at the time, so we hadn't played there, and I got into a jam, and I jammed with different drummers, and when this one gentleman, who's now our drummer, Mark Webb, when he, we had never played before, and so when we first started songs, he was throwing me ideas, I was throwing him ideas, and then without any kind of conversation, we would agree on something, and then we were in the pocket and rocking. And I remember just after that night, calling up Butch and say, Butch, I think we found a drummer, but he played in Star Root's band. So when I was over there one day, I said, Star Root, I really enjoyed playing with Mark, and I would love him to play with Uncle Butchie too. So rather than going behind your back and asking him, I'm going to ask you first. Would you be offended if I asked him to play, not leave your band, but to play with us too? And she gave me the okay. And that's one of the ways of keeping things very copacetic and friendly. Where even though I thought he might even he would enjoy playing with us, there's a right way to do things, and I'm very happy that I approached her and asked her how she would feel if I approached him, and she gave me the okay. If she hadn't given me the okay, I don't know what I would do. But that's a what if. That would be indulging in needless sophistry. Because philosophy is the love of wisdom, and sophistry is the love of questions. So now that Uncle Butchie, and what's anybody who might have recalled me playing the Goob song when I kind of first put it together, just strumming along and reading off a page, and now I got the words pretty much finished up, have it structured, and you heard on guitar. But when I picked up the bass, and that was another tricky thing, words I'm still getting accustomed to, a melody that I'm still refining. Playing bass to a song I've only played guitar on, and the independent coordination that kind of goes with that, because I'm not just strumming the rhythm, I'm kind of playing the rhythm, but I also do little counterpoint rhythms. And but still, we did 2 passes of the song, and on banjo, especially Uncle. It's just not a banjo. It's Butch Robbins and his interpretation of my song while playing on banjo, and he is a true virtuoso. And the virtuosity that I appreciate is obviously solid technique, but it's not about flash. It's about phrasing, melody, how one uses timing. That's virtuosity to me. It isn't about the most notes played in a measure. There could be certain, we play some songs where he's really picking. But if every song we did was with him picking the way he does in some of the songs that are blistering, we'd have no texture. We'd have one texture. We have a lot of different textures. It's like different fabrics, like wool and silk and linen and hemp and cotton and. It's just, there are different textures. Each one feels different. And even if you had the exact same t-shirt made from all different materials, it would be different in each iteration. So, anyway, it's having the full band, because Butch and I have played another song of mine that I've done called "Seems Like Yesterday," and but this was with a band, me playing, and I was playing guitar and he was playing banjo, and I wanted to play my bass with his banjo, and so finally that was one of the fun things that happened was one of my songs with Butch on banjo, me on bass, and the drummer. So I'm hoping if I don't catch it this coming up Friday rehearsal, I'll get it pretty soon. But the chances are, the better prepared I make myself, for singing it and playing bass, and if I have my act really together, there's a good chance that the take that we do will be smooth, because the drummer follows me. He's on me like glue. So if I do like a flawless performance, which is a little tricky because it's kind of hard to monitor my bass playing while I'm trying to remember words that are still fresh, new to me. But if I kind of nail that, chances are he'll nail the part, and Butch starts nailing things about the 3rd time he plays them. So we'll see how that goes. I would love to be able to have that, and I'm thinking about just doing a guitar version also, kind of, because this is the time. This is the lunar cycle I have to put that "Go to Your Room" song out. This is the tongue. My words, I got some people to spank with my words. Go to your room. No, just go to your room. No spanking. Just go to your room. What I like about the bass, Oswald, is it's kind of like I feel the magical space that I occupy, a foot in each world. So because I'm right there in the rhythm with the drummer. So in one ways, it's almost like being, another drum, I'm another rhythm instrument. But because I have notes, I'm able to, interact with Butch. So and I have, so I'm right in the middle of the rhythm that Butch is following. And then, he's following Butch and I'm in the middle, and and it's just such a great place to be, to kind of like, okay, what do I play with Butch now, and melodically, and then, okay, now how do I take the melody and make it really work with the drummer? And I love the bass. I really do. So, examining routines of the psyche. And I really feel this is a good time, because this lunar cycle really allows us to kind of be two people, to be twins. Hello, Soul Traveler. And so you can be the twin with the routine, and then have the other twin have a look at the routines. Like I said, that self-auditing. It's funny, Ellie writes, stuck in the middle with you. When I was playing with another guitar player, that was one of the songs that we played. And that's one of the reasons we were doing covers, and I'm tired of, I can't expect to wow people playing other people's music. Because the reason why that music wowed people to begin with is because the people who originally performed it wrote it. There's something very special about original music. But the thing is, a lot of people go, nobody likes original music. Write a really good fucking song and they will. Seriously. And a lot of good songs, there's a melody that people can kind of recall easily, a groove. I ran into, like, at the party I was at, I ran into some musicians, and they have really complex originals. You could say, and I was thinking about this when I was driving home. That's why I started a half an hour late. And was that one of the things that good musicians get caught up in is trying to make music that other musicians will be impressed with. Oh, please. Musicians, even when they're supportive, they're gonna, they're in the field. So, and unlike a lot of people who are critics in music, as consumers, the people who are in the field, oh, that's pretty damn critical. And I just really feel that the last person, it's smart musicians will appreciate musicians who can work for a living. And you do that by writing music that people like. And one of the things that people do like about music is people like to dance. And they really like music where they kind of went there and they weren't thinking about dancing, but the music made them dance. And so that's what I've done. Like Madfinger said, "Horse with no name, 2 chords." He's correct. A lot of the songs I'm writing now are 3 and 4 chords, and sometimes the same chords in one pattern and the exact same 3 chords in not necessarily an inverse, but a slightly different way of going to each other, maybe a 4th chord. And the reason why is because the chords are kind of following a melody that is existing for them. And you can do all kinds of melodies, you know, with the exact same chords. And so that's where I think a lot of musicians sometimes, you know, get lost, is they think the chords necessarily have to be great rather than the melody. Now, sometimes chords can be great. What I Walk put out this on his. If you haven't gone to I Walk and heard the something for the others, Ode to the Others or something, you can write the title, and you can even you know, tell people, you know, about you know, a track there. I know you've gotten a few subscribers, and that's the other thing about this community. A few people have decided, okay, I've had a YouTube channel, it's time for me to start doing something. And if they had decided to do that not in a community, they could languish. Being in a community, at least you automatically have a couple of handfuls of people, and that makes all the difference in the world. To, you know, the difference between, you know, you're putting out something and 13 people are already, you know, they're going to be hearing it, versus 3, 5. And that's what community does. We hold each other up. And the beauty is the Silent Ode to Others. Thank you. That's the name of this musical piece. There's no words, at least not yet. It's music, and it is. I listened to it again yesterday, and then I found myself, after I turned it off, that it was still playing in my head. That's what we want. We want to stick in people's heads. That's good music writing. And like these guys were talking about, they write musicians music. Oh yeah, we play in 5/4 and 7/4. And all these off timings. I had a really good drummer in New York. We played together for 20 or 30 years, but he loved off timings. And that's because it's kind of, oh, I'm just tired of 4/4. Man, there's endless things to do in 4/4. But that takes real super creativity, is to find the new in what you think is old. So one of the ways that some like musicians will be fresh is they'll do a rhythm that not everybody else is doing. The problem with those 5/4s and those 7/4 rhythms, you can't dance to them. The only real off rhythm that I know of that you can dance to is a waltz, a 3/4. No, I don't have a favorite genre. I don't. Matter of fact, one of the things that we do in Uncle Butchie, when people ask us, well, what kind of music we play, I said, we play music. Well, what genre? What are you, a booking agent? Genre is for marketing agents. Genres are for the uncreative marketers to be able to create a market that just kind of waits because the genre is there. Genre is genres happen naturally, but again, what the archontic forces do with anything natural is they start gaming it. And generally they game it for their advantage, and usually towards, some money magic advantage. And so we're not, if I had to pick any, to me the genre is danceable music with melodies and a lot of life to it. Very lively music. Okay. Yeah, once again, I'm a political atheist. I consider two-party politics to be schizophrenia at the societal level. Labels. This is great, Fox and Dre, because it just hit me. Labeling things like genres, are routines. They're routines of the psyche. And so what the Goobs try to do is they try to get us in routines so they can game the routines. And then they try to make it feel like, and then they even try to make it feel like if you don't know what the routine is, you're lost. Well, I don't know what kind of music you play. Well, come and listen to it. It sound, like, what kind of music do you play? Well, you gotta listen. It's almost to me like when sometimes I'll be eating something, somebody goes, how does that taste? I don't know. So sometimes when it depends. Depending on who asks, people say, how does that taste? I say, it tastes like shit, but I'm loving it. Hello, Jorge. There were just... So this is about, examining routines of the psyche. All this stuff I'm kind of riffing on right here is how we kind of break molds and get out. And one of the ways of breaking molds is for us to examine our routines. And labels of things are routines, and again, they're largely marketing routines. Now, cuisine is a different thing. And now somebody say, well, it could be like musical cuisines. Yeah, there is. There is no question there's a flavor, but one of the things that Uncle Butchie does is we play in different flavors. And that's why it can't do a genre. We play, one of the songs we play is What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. Okay, but then we're also playing that with, Salt Creek, Cripple Creek, and all these, either banjo songs. And the other thing that Butch has done is take fiddle tunes and learn to play them on banjo, because fiddle and banjo approach that mountain music differently because they're different instruments. So to give himself more of a wider variety and a wider approach within what was a genre, because he played with Bill Monroe, the man who kind of invented the genre called bluegrass. And so one of the ways he branched out was he watched how fiddle players, or violin players, but if you're playing this music, it's a fiddle. And how fiddle players approach, because it's like if let's say you went and saw a bluegrass band, and you have a fiddle player and you have a banjo player, and it's okay, and each guy gets a solo. They're going to play different melodies and also different kinds of counterpoints because the nature of their musician and how they, one's got a bow and the other one's playing with finger picking. So there were just dynamics that go with forming melodies and rhythms that are unique to the instruments. So one of the way Butch kind of got inspired to find new ways to pick the banjo and melodies playing the banjo was, what kind of solo did that fiddle player take in the same song that I took a solo in? And then breaking that down. So we do fiddle tunes as well as old banjo tunes. And then there's me on my kind of modern bass where I honor the feel, the original feel, but I jazz it up a little bit. And the jazzing is from my own spirit. It's not like I'm trying to jazz it up. I have a perky spirit. I have a very good sense of time, so I don't just have to play right there dead on the one and the three. I can, get a little ahead of the one, a little behind the one, a little, I can bounce off of them a little bit. And even in my guitar strumming, I do a lot of things like, playing 3 strums and 5 strums in a measure where there's like 4 beats. And I don't do this mentally. It's not like, I'm going to be clever and play 3 strums in a 4-beat rhythm, which means that your actual rhythms are kind of falling in, not on the normal ones, but they still are in time. These are just natural approaches I have to rhythm. My rhythm, I kind of have an internal rhythm that's going boom, 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 and then I'm hearing all of the counterpoints off of that rhythm. And a lot of times my guitar rhythms will do that, and I'm trying to get actually a little bit more structured. because then the whole thing is, okay, I now have all these rhythms, but the guitar maybe should be playing this and leave those other rhythmic things to another instrument. Well, it's, like I might, yeah, they are dismissive. Like if certain people don't might have heard the term bluegrass but don't know what that genre is. And now, and if I were to say bluegrass to a bluegrass person and they came to hear us, they might like this. They might really like what they heard, but they would say, that ain't bluegrass. And then if you tell somebody bluegrass who doesn't know what bluegrass is, or have heard bluegrass, and go, I don't like it at all. And meanwhile, they might love what we're doing. And so that's what I mean. We got incredible feedback, including from the people who did the musicians' music. And the song that knocked these guys out. Once again, these are guys, musicians. The song we did that blew these guys away was "Caravan" by Duke Ellington. And it's got a real driving thing, and Mark plays this constant, doom da doom da doom da doom, and I kind of mask it on the bass, and then we towards one part of the song, and then we fall into a little more of a bouncy rhythm, and when we pulled it off really well, and it has stops, it has like absolute dead stop silence, and then it comes in again. And each time you come in from a dead silence, there's room for 3 people to fuck up unless they all come in like one. And each time we came in like one. And when that happens, from dead silence to like full speed ahead, that that can give you goosebumps. So so here we play a Louis Armstrong song, we play a Duke Ellington song, and then we're playing some Butch Robbins original material, some stuff by Monroe, and then just unknown. I mean, we're playing some songs that I don't. If you told me the original authors, I wouldn't know. That sounds great, Niche. I mean, when I was 14 and still playing rhythm guitar, I used to go to. We used to have. This was down in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. And now we were at a campsite. We were in a big tent. We had electricity, and they used to have what were known as clam bakes. And basically, you had steamers, regular clams, and corn on the cob, and other stuff. And we had a garbage man. And his name was Gabby because he talked a lot, but he was also a steel guitar player. And he was just a delightful man, and he could just play for hours on a steel guitar. And I didn't know a lot of the music, but my next door tent people, they were in a trailer instead of a tent. And he played upright bass. And he was one of these people who, even if he didn't know the song, he could hear it coming. So I didn't know any of his music, so I would sit right next to him, and he would tell me before the chord changed what the next chord was. So I was able to sit in and play with these guys, even though I didn't know the music, because I had somebody who very gently, he knew. He would tell me before the chord changed what the next chord. If he said a chord, it would be the next chord, and he just kept me on track, and this was at 14, this was when I was 14, even 13, 14, and 15. So I started at 13 probably. And they were enormous fun. And they were all outdoors. A lot of times, there'd be a little structure with, there might be like a little tin roof and some picnic tables on a concrete, and sometimes not on concrete, sometimes just on the ground. But if it rained, you didn't have to, you didn't get wet just in case it rained. Oh, what amazing times. Really, really amazing. Something I cannot figure out. I have listened to playbacks, and I hear my volume sometimes go up and go down, and I do not have, there's no automatic adjustment. There's no reason my volume should adjust. I have to wonder if it isn't YouTube, because on my end, and I'm geeky enough to figure that kind of stuff out. I thought maybe it was on one. Sometimes because there are selections auto adjust volume, and sometimes they can lag. And I don't have any of that going on, but I've heard it in my own videos. I've heard my voice suddenly kind of go up and just distort a little bit, not nasty, but get a little fuzzy, and then drop down. And it's just like, hey, could you speak up a little bit there, Rad? Actually, we have you're talking about like, like what you might call corny type songs, like Rawhide. We do a medley that is a of Sailor's Hornpipe and Turkey in a Straw. Now, you might know Turkey in a Straw. Sailor's Hornpipe is the theme music for the Popeye cartoons. Not that part. Dan, 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 not that part, but whatever. That part. That's called the Sailor's Hornpipe. That's the original title of that. So we do a couple of passages of Sailor's Hornpipe, and then we go into Turkey in a Straw. And I play some. Again, I keep the feel, but I play plenty of bass in those songs. So in many ways, I tend to. There's a little bit. I grew up in rock and roll, so I tend to bring a certain "let's rock this baby out." But rocking it out to me means to fill it with some attitude. It's not just play it. Rock and roll is an attitude. And so you don't bring, you don't have to bring, it's not like, it's again, then it's not like punk attitude. It's, rock and roll. It's like, let's party, man. And then, now I have my kind of this go to your room has almost like a Dixieland jazz kind of jauntiness to it. So it fits really in with the kind of, the good time. We play good time music, having a good time. What a Wonderful World is one of the few slower songs we do. Joseph has his Butch's name is Joseph. Every once in a while I call him Joseph. Butch wrote a song called Dream that is a fairly mellow song, and it's interesting because our drummer he has a band that he plays with, a couple of original band that practice at his house, and they play like AC/DC rock, hard rock, Aerosmith, that kind of hard rock. And so he's kind of that kind of drummer, but because he's an in the pocket drummer, he fits in the band, and Butch and I both love him to play with him. But sometimes, when it gets a little unrock and rolly, he's got to find new chops for himself. And, he has to invent new ways of playing drums that challenges him. And fortunately, he loves it. And I think any real musician likes to kind of get themselves in a situation where it's like, oh my God, usually, I can shine, and I'm not shining here. So the whole thing is, well, once you do a little homework and put in a little time, you'll shine. It's just, what it is you're been knocked, here we go, knocked out of your routine. This is not your routine. So now you have to kind of reinvent something. Not reinvent, invent. Like, okay, I'm in this other field of music than I normally play. This is not routine for me. So now you have to get creative and figure out, how do you play that? There's a rhythm to it, and it isn't like, well, okay, let me see how somebody else. Because when Butch went down to Nashville and he did some CDs, so he could try to get a record deal. He couldn't bring Mark and I, so he used studio musicians, very clean musicians. And one of the things he told me, he goes, I want you, just to hear the feel and whatever. Because, but the last thing I want you to do is don't play I want you to keep your bass parts. And that's because every musician will produce different things. And one of the things he likes my sense of rhythm. He likes the way I drive. and it certainly was a break in routine for me. But I love it, and this because Butch is such an astounding lead instrument. So this seems to be a very uh, really nice crowd in the chat. You know, as far as dialoguing with each other, you know, riffing off each other, riffing off me. It's kind of like making music. So one of the ways we can, you know, the idea of that the world sucks. The real way is, you know, part of it. You know, you want to snipe at it. You know, and if you can knock down some cornerstones and bring shit down without hurting any, you know, out hurting innocents, that's real good. But the real the real way, is you build new, because it's energy that holds things together, and we can build new routines. And that's, one of the reasons I had a little thing about, like, let's say the blue chicken crowd, is that by ignoring them and just going off, like, and if we think they're chasing space ghosts, well, then how about we demonstrate what we do, and not even without even a reference to them. Again, just leave them in the dust. Old news. Blue chickens, old news. And that is build the new world, and the old one will just fall apart. But that's also one of the things I like about the alternative chronology. Although it appears that the chronology that we are routinely used to is contrived. And the main contrivance seems to have put the ancient world, the world before the monotheisms took over, to make that seem so long ago. And according to this new chronology and looking at it critically, the fuckery, the deep fuckery we have might only be 1,000 years, roughly. Not 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years. And and with some of the, I mean, it was, in many ways, it was to put when we had real freedom out, conceptually out of reach. It's like, that's just so long ago you can't recover it. Rather than, something looks to me like a family genealogy wouldn't even need a whole lot of branches to kind of get to what people are calling AD. And especially if we start configuring that the concept of BC, I mean, right now, when we hear the word BC, right away we know, okay, we have to know we're immediately going back 2,000 years in time. What if, when we hear BC, we're going back roughly 1,000 years of time? And that would be for the earlier BC stuff. And then apparently the Egyptian stuff they buried could even be 1,800 years off of it. And there have been some critiques about when they line up some of the genealogies that there's kind of like the old Egyptian chronology and the new one, and apparently the new one has a lot of additions to it. And the other thing, here's the other thing, that if by placing AD 2,000 years ago, what it kind of puts at touch is that it until maybe like let's say 1700, much of the world might have still been pagan. Much of the world. And of course that's too close for comfort for those who want to make the pagans a bunch of unwashed, you know, child sacrificing, cannibalizing, uh, don't wash their ass type of people. Hello, RC. And then, you know, even that, you know, we know that the Roman Church and their minions basically exterminated pagan Europe. What if that only happened, you know, 500 years ago? Instead of 1500 years ago. What if the Roman Empire that, you know, they're saying ended, you know, like 500 AD was in fact 500 years after a new day for Jesus at 1050. So then what you would really have is kind of like what looks like the Roman Empire ending, and then you have Spain and the rest of the people now moving to the New World, like almost within this, you know, a generation or two. These are suppositions, all right? New Earth Channel is where all of this kind of got started. Anatoly Fomenko is the egghead. I mean, he's when you first start reading, he has all his credentials. He's a serious scholar and intellect, because geometry and differentials are part of his milieu, or part of his what he can do. I mean, he's a serious thinker, which makes some of the reading very dry. He's not a novel writer, that's for sure. And yeah, Blue Avians, Linda. Oh, hello, Linda. That's the David Wilcock, Corey Good stuff, but we try not to mention their names around here. Don't want to give them any more energy or press. At least not in my streams. Other people make, you know, it's part of what they do. By the way, Linda is my friend who I said really appreciated that 40-minute video I offered people to watch with my live stream on Saturday night. I'm in the barn. Say hello to the horses for me. She's cleaning poo. And she has a few horses. I forget how many horses she has. They eat a lot. They digest a lot. And then they have to do something with all that. And Linda's feeding them and cleaning up after them. Linda knows Butch Robbins. Linda has, matter of fact, Linda was at the very first little GMOP gathering we had in New Jersey, where I met Butch Robbins, where Butch Robbins and I bonded. She was there for when Butch Robbins and I first ever played together. Now, certain routines, like cleaning up after your horses, there's no real rethinking that routine. Are you talking? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Butch Robbins is a virtuoso, and I get to play bass for him. I sometimes, sometimes he because at the moment, he's not getting the notoriety, and oh, you were Bill Monroe's banjo player. Yeah, but Bill Monroe's been buried. Butch Robbins is still around, and he's not Bill Monroe's banjo player. He's a serious banjo player. And every once in a while, I say, Butch, I wouldn't be playing with any. It's not was never my. I never knew. Like I would never think to have played with a banjo player until I heard you, and then it didn't matter that you were playing a banjo. You're making music. You're making melodies. You have phrasing. You have rhythm. That's why I play with you. The fact that it doesn't matter that you play a banjo. In many ways, it's kind of like ethnicity or something. Somebody's just a good person. Who cares? Really, I mean, it doesn't. Even if they're not a good person, it doesn't matter. A bad person's a bad person because they're making bad choices. That's one of the things. Also, I try to remind them because Butch. Everybody wants to play with Butch, and everybody who wants to play with Butch is not somebody or not people that Butch wants to play with. I was when we were playing at the benefit for our friend. We had all kinds of people there, and there was this guy who plays solo, and hey Butch, we got to get together. When do you think we can do it? And Butch is playing, and I now I know Butch, and Butch was just trying to keep the conversation moving without saying, Jim, I don't want to play with you. Why would what's there for me? And yeah, people are always after Butch to play with them, and Butch likes playing with me and Mark. That's the people he likes to play with now. Leon Russell has passed over. Butch played with Leon Russell. There's a great video. I forget it. It's down in the south somewhere, but it's a performance cave. They're in a cave. It's a big cave, and it's a Leon Russell show. And there's Butch on stage the whole time playing banjo. So, in many ways, although the focus of tonight hasn't been particularly Gnostic-y, to me, part of the core of being Gnostic is being a human animal and doing the things we like, doing the things we love, especially, and being the communal animals that we are, and then the unique animals we are with all our all that cerebral stuff there. And so tonight's Can't You Hear Me Gnostic, as many was just the human thing. I mean, being a Gnostic is to me a way of just being really connected to the planet that you're in, having a place of where sovereignty isn't about the name and whether your name's written in capitals. It's about what planet you're on, what your creation story is, your place in that creation story, your place in this galaxy. And one of the things Gnostics do is keep it to the galaxy. Galaxy is a lot of real estate. There's a lot of real estate in the galaxy and a lot of planets with life on them in this one galaxy. that's enough to keep even the most imaginative person very busy. And then when when you start pulling it back and stop chasing the spheres and the ascended masters and alternate timelines, and you just bring it back to where we are, and you're going, wow, this is a really beautiful planet. If only we could have access to it. Oh, there's this layer of creeps that seems to feel that they can stand between us and them. And it's the critical waking up, and the big part of it is who you are on this planet, who we are on this planet. And hello, Zach. And that's where your sovereignty comes from, who you are on this planet. And then there's a real sense of empowerment. And then the only frustration with that empowerment is that you're looking around where are the other empowered people? And you say, okay, then you find a handful, and then you say, oh, gee, you think all you have to do is, share this and it'll just spread like wildfire. And no, instead it spreads like a fire on wet wood. So the question is, why is the wood so wet? And part of it is being in routines that were set for us by social engineers. And the greatest social engineers of all are the religions. The ones that say that they have the narrative of our cosmology, where we come from, who we owe allegiance to, sin, this, that, all the rest of that vomit. And that's and because those are the conversations. Now Linda's here; she'll like this. That those cosmologies are the conversations that we're born into. The chronology that we understand from the history books is a conversation we're born into. So we're born into conversations, and then we continue the conversation. We don't break it; we continue it. And part of creating a new world is part of creating new conversations that are based on our story. And one of the big epiphanies for me was the word mystery and my story. And again, my story is the individualized part of our story. Okay? Because, there's our story, and then you have your part of it. So that'd be my story. And so what was the occulted? And again, the reason why things went occult or were hidden is because a new thought system came on the planet, an alien thought system that was very well backed up with weaponry. And so we have what are known, the ones who held the occult, at least the higher mysteries, the mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries, but the mystery schools. They could also be called the My Story schools, because mystery and my story, to me, are linked. Our story has been kept hidden, and it's been, the smart ones took it underground for survival, and the other ones have been cementing over it as best they can. And so really, to me, what really is at the core of the mysteries, not, I'm not talking about a genre like a mystery novel. I'm talking about real, the fact that, the great knowledge was held in what? The mysteries. And why was it the great knowledge? Because it's our story. And for you and me personally, it would be my story. So we have his story, Ms. or my story. And for the true Gnostics and the Gnostic narrative, the master narrative, the Sophianic narrative that John has managed to retrieve from both scholar and shamanic fashion. As he has said, the Gnostics were the people who ran the mystery schools. So I walk. You're saying, right? I'm going to read something you just wrote. Comes from an honest place. I was in a pretty bad way when I wrote it. Are you speaking about the ode to the others? Because I just want to make sure, because I want to say something if that's what the case is. So is the song that you put out the one that you were in a pretty bad place when you wrote it? Well, the reason I'm gonna start on it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay. Yes. What I like about the music is that I hear it is a song that to me in it I hear the struggle. It's almost like battling a storm, scaling a mountain. But there's a spirit of that, even though this is challenging, I will prevail. And that was why the spirit. I'm getting a little goosebumps now. That's why I liked it. I heard what it was to me was our true spirit, our an inspired spirit going up against something bigger than itself with the intention to win, and or at least die trying. And it's just been so joyful a place to be in, where there were us other live streamers and people making videos without live streaming, and then all the people who are now joining the output and creating context. Sarath the Mage, has suddenly gotten very productive at sharing his solstice rituals with us. Meandering Mystic, has shared, his experiences with animals, drawing animal cards, pulling us into the animal medicine, making it real and applicable, and a reason why you would want to re-enter a dialogue with the earth through the animals. I mean, you might go, I don't know about the Sophianic narrative. Well, then how about animal medicine? Because animal medicine will get you into the narrative. And now, Meandering Mystic was doing some sacred geometry, flower of life things. And boy, is he good. You're saying, oh, it's not so neat. It's like, well, come on, man, get real. And it was like so crisp. And that's the other thing, is because we're a community, like you say, Sarath gave me the courage to do it. That's what community does. When one of us is kind of sitting on something, like going, "Come on, are you serious? Would you please just do it, release it, put it out there?" And that's what community does. We raise each other up, and that's teamwork. You know, it's this cross inspiration. Oh, I see you answering an RH negative, and I saw out of the corner of my eye that somebody was saying about off top. I think it was Oswald, and I didn't read it because I can't do that. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Foxadrate basically it's giving the same answer I would. The RH negative, you know, again, it's another rabbit hole. It's another division. Yeah, there's RH negative people and there's RH positive people. There's probably an interesting story to it. I think it matters to certain people, but when you just want to be a human animal, it doesn't apply. Doesn't apply at all. To me, the only time RH negative matters is when if you think somehow it makes you special. And apparently there are certain ones on this planet who do think it makes them special. Good luck with that. You know, we will know humans by the way, we will know each other by the way we interact with each other. And you start acting like you're something special, and it's because of, you know, what your blood factor is. Good luck fitting in with that one. Actually, if you think you're special, go to your room. Go to your room. I mean, I could riff on that, but I don't like to riff on things that to me there's so much baggage with, and I consider it an unimportant conversation. I consider it an unimportant topic. I consider it a topic about that, you know, it doesn't affect us. I mean, my mother was an RH negative woman, and she had the green eyes, and you know, and I chose her to be my mother. I mean, because that's where you know, I come from. You know, I was hanging out before I had a body, and so I picked the people who were gonna, you know, be giving me the kind of a genetic blend that would complement what I wanted to do. Greetings, Sarath. Wait, how does he do it? Kind of cross. Greetings, Sarath. Um, yeah, and you know, there's going to be people in our own communities that are going to be RH negative people, and we don't want to make them either better or it's just like how you conducting yourself. That stuff is just not part of the master narrative. Did I get it? I guess I must have got it pretty good. Oh, my mother is a very interesting mutt. But again, you know, I got what I wanted from her, and it's a good blend. It helps, you know, it works for me. The real, I mean, when it comes to planetary tantra, and to me being a Gnostic as opposed to a Nagha I mean, the Nagha are all over the place because they have that hot mess of cosmologies trying to act as one thing, and it's not. It's two or three. You know, the Nag Hammadi are a mixture of two or three different streams. One is, you know, the kind of Jewish mysticism. The other one is what I will call what later turns out to be kind of Christian salvationism, or, you know, the the world leader, almost like a theosophical concept. And then you have the Gnostic stuff thrown in there, and they are, the Christian one is an offshoot, salvationism and Savior and a battle at the end of time. Well, that starts actually with Zoroaster, finds its way into later Jewish thought, which, Jewish thought, Jewish religion, because of the Babylonian captivity and Cyrus the Great, and sending Persians back. I mean, that whole final battle at the end of time between good and evil, and you see it also in the Norse Ragnarok kind of scenarios. That is not part of the Gnostic cosmology, because what it is they all those cosmologies, they have their creation and then they have their end times narrative. The master narrative, the Gnostic narrative, the Sophianic narrative doesn't have an end times. We're in the middle of it right now. We're just trying to get back on track, and once we get back on track, it's about creativity and growth and expansion, and at some point something different than what we are. I won't call it ascension, but the amount of energy and spirit that we are capable of pulling into, even in these bodies, and then what might happen to these bodies once we really start pulling in some of that stuff, has its own trajectory. But the one trajectory not there is a battle at the end of time between good and evil. That is a completely Middle Eastern concept. And it really, if it didn't, I don't know that it started with Zarathustra himself, but just like, after Jesus died, that's its own conversation. But within the current chronology and mythos, okay. But whoever that person was, as soon as the founder dies, you start getting the ism. Lao Tzu was an incredibly wise man. Reading the Tao and understanding the way versus the law is brilliant, but building like a system around it, like Taoism, I find that a little funky. Which is why you'll almost never hear me use the word Gnosticism. I'll say Gnostic thought, whatever. I don't like isms, like I said, unless they're an organism. But the real difference between what we in Planetary Tantra call the master narrative, which is the Earth narrative, which is the narrative that our old shamans retrieved from both the pleroma itself and from the intelligence of the Earth, Sophia herself, wisdom itself. Never forget that Sophia means wisdom, and it's a quality, and that is the driving quality of Homo sapiens. Sapiens means wise. So yeah, the master narrative, the difference between the cosmology of the Gnostics and all of the or at least all the other dominant cosmologies, is all the other cosmologies have this battle between good and evil at the end of times, and that kind of a final judgment. That is, and they all have that in common. And then you have the mysteries and Gnostic thought. Very, very different. And so you kind of got to, if you want to, you have to get into your heart. You have to get out of your mind a little bit. I mean, you can keep, your mind is right below your heart, chakra-wise. But it's wisdom. And if you really want wisdom, then to me, our story, the mysteries, and what they reveal are what is our narrative. So since we're in co-creation with the planetary animal mother and with the greater galaxy. There is no end of this book. This is not a plan. This is an experiment. The way, the Tao of the universe, the Tao of the galaxy, the Tao of this planet have their own guidances, but that's part of the coherence that kind of keeps everything, in some kind of form as we dance and figured out new things, be creative, be imaginative, and perhaps at some point that's applicable, start interacting with any other galactic cousins we have out there. But as I said before, somebody, an anthropine from another planet in our galaxy is going to have a very different perspective, because we have a pleroma aeon that formed into the planet that we live on, and that consciousness resides with us, and it's been gaining great agency over the years. And that's why sometimes where I even think, like let's say that some people are mystically interacting with intelligences from other planets in our galaxy, their narrative has to be different, because they will take their source from the pleroma where the panspermia originated from. They will correctly be associating their source with the pleroma. Now, of course, the pleroma is the source of everything, but we have the unique condition where an aspect, an aeon, a quality of the pleroma caught an interest, got a little pulled out of the pleromic game, found herself, the aeon wisdom found itself in a situation that it was not prepared for, and figured it out, turned into a planet. And so there is there's a real, I won't call it a danger, but there can be problems interacting with any other sentient being that is not earth-born anthropine and doesn't have the perspective of living with an aeon. I mean, just think, like part of the source that all the rest of the galaxy, in other words, there's a source of the galaxy, and then there's our unique dispensation, and that changes things in that we kind of need to stay until this planet again gets together and we have our story, and that we understand. Then we can mix it out, because then we can learn. Then there's all kinds of things. Until we're kind of understand who we are, then other people's stories, their narratives can be very confusing, even if it's from a very enlightened, high vibrational being. If it's a being from another planet in this galaxy, it's going to be a different perspective. It's going to be a different narrative, a narrative that's true for them. From my father's side, he's half French Canadian. Well, again, we all have Native American blood, and we don't have percentages for that. So we just have to, it is the addition it is. So without the Native American blood, my father is half French Canadian and half Scotch Welsh Irish. My mother is full French Canadian, and so, but she has some. Her name's Saracen, okay? Her last name is Saracen, not spelled. Now, Saracen in certain text is another way of saying a Mohammedan or a Muslim. But my mother seemed to understand that her Saracen name came from the Tatars. And the Tatars were people of Central Asia, where Greater Tartaria gets its name. Greater Tartaria is another one of those history mysteries that was part of all the old maps. Matter of fact, when I do my next Mystic Brew, I'm going to pull out some of these old maps. It was like 1.5 gigabytes of maps, and they're all, they're old it's old cartography, and how often Greater Tartaria or Grand Tartaria is all over where we now call Russia, and even parts south. But my mother had attributed her, and the fact that although she was fair, she was like dirty blonde hair, hazel eyes. My Uncle Richard was blonde-haired, blue-eyed. My Aunt Anne, I only met once. I can't remember a thing about her, really. But I do. My mother's younger sister, my Aunt Pat, and her oldest brother. So the youngest and oldest were born olive-skinned and very hairy. Very hairy. Matter of fact, the joke about my uncle was the only part that he didn't have hair on were the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. And so, although at one point I thought it might have been Moorish or Berber blood, because once again she is Rh negative, that might have entered France because the Moors got as far north into France as Narbonne, which is pretty much on the coast, getting close to the Spanish border or the Pyrenees. But that would be one source. But my mother, I remember her telling me that the Saracens actually came from the Tatars, and again, irregardless of timelines, there was some conversion to Islam, and that's why the Tatars would have been like Crimea, Turkmenistan. The kind of the stands would be Tatarstan in many ways, which at one point was all, and then Siberia. Well, that was called Greater Tartaria. So there's, again, and what's interesting about genetics is genetic memory. It isn't about bragging rights. To me, the value of, of having, let's call it maybe a little more exotic genetics is the memory that gets pulled out of it, and little to do with, we go back to this and we go back, if you can't remember, it doesn't matter. Oh, do I have a theory about the difference between tall people and shorter people? Hello, Chris. But that's, we're getting towards the end of this one, and it's a little controversial. It's controversial even from a Gnostic perspective, because you could call it gets a little extracurricular. Well, it's interesting. My friend, the ambassador, grew up in Sweden, and was raised, one of the Protestant forms of, the thousands of Protestant forms there are. And then a decade or so ago, converted to Islam. And sometimes, I'm just thinking, I go, okay, I can understand, that you were like, this Protestant Christian shit isn't for me. Plus, he's a really intelligent guy, and when you start looking into some of the historical claims and this, that, and intelligent people don't do well when they examine the Christian narrative. I don't know how any of the narratives hold up to intellect, actually. But when I think about it, it's like, okay, so you decided not to be a Christian. You're Swedish, and you didn't go pagan. But pagans has a bad name. Pagans are misunderstood. But I think one of the most interesting things about an alternate chronology, and when Christianity really started, and of course its extermination of the pagans, was that might have all happened only about 1,000 years ago, maybe a little bit less, if the historical figure that was put 2,000 years ago, in fact, lived in what is now Western Turkey, let's say the Constantinople area, the Balkans area, kind of, Bulgaria, Western Turkey, lived, died, crucified there. If Anatoly Fomenko was correct, and it might even, explain why, like, for the people who were living there and they were writing, like, let's I-695, okay? The letter I-695, which later on we're told means 1695. In one way, you see, it's correct in that with the I, it means 695 years after either the birth or death of Jesus Christ. So that means, like, I have, like, a 33, 36 year plus or minus type of thing going on there. So for them, would have been real. Okay, so like, in other words, this is 695 years after this man died, and we saw him as the Christ, and we started a religion. So, like I said, I've just started to really I've been working with this for years. Sylvie's been putting out the New Earth videos for about at least 3 years now, I think. And I've watched every single video she's ever put out, and some of them 2 and some of them 3 times. And then sometimes I'll see other people who do retakes of her stuff, and then in many ways I'm watching the video a 3rd or a 4th time. But right now there's just certain things, and one of the things that I'm realizing that it really hinges on, okay, is that apparently there was a Christ figure that I think got named Jesus. There was somebody who the people that formed the original Orthodox churches, and it seems like Greece, Assyria, or Syria, that whole part of the world would have been something that was within historical memory for them. And so they were recounting, they had started to count from his death or his birth, that once the things had passed through the dark ages, there was, it seems to me, and it's seeming to a lot of other people, that before that I date, there's actually that in other words, there's 1,000 years added, because anything before that I date, and if that, let's put that I date at 1,000, let's make it the year 1,000 instead of 1,050, just to keep numbers round. That means that the true, what we're now reckoning as BC, or before this Christ person, is 1,000 years ago, not 2,000 years ago. And then it seems that there's some playing. So there's been playing in what we call the AD time, and it looks like there was also some adjustments in the BC time that makes ancient Egypt look like it was thousands of years ago. Coming up into recent times when you have Ptolemaic Egypt. That's the Ptolemies after Alexander the Conqueror took Egypt. and he left, one of his generals there, and that was the Ptolemy. And so you had the Ptolemaic dynasties of Egypt that ran from like what we're calling 333 BC. So if that was 333 BC, and BC was 1,000 years ago, so that would mean that Ptolemaic Egypt was 1,300 years ago. Think about that. Ptolemaic Egypt, 1,300 years ago. And then if the Library of Alexandria was burned, let's say, I don't have the exact date. Maybe Fox or Dre knows whether, when that was, or whether it was after the formation. I'm just going to pick 300 AD. And if we use if we can kind of use what AD means after this man died, who they called Yassos, where they got the I from, and sometimes there's a J, and sometimes they use an X. So when they were writing like the 13th century, they would put X. If they were put in the 3rd century after this man, they would have put an X. That's the Chi. The X is the Chi in the Greek alphabet. What looks like an X is pronounced Chi, C-H-I, which is interesting because there's a little chi there. And then when you see the X with what looks like a P through it, what looks like a P in the Greek alphabet is an R. So what that's called is the Chi Rho, which is the beginning of the word for Christ. Chi is the X part, and then the R looks like a P, and that's where you get that XP looking kind of thing they use. So if Hypatia was murdered and the Library of Alexandria was burned in 300 AD, that would have been 700 years ago. So now you can see, like, that's not, 700 years ago. We can get like into great grandfathers and be getting pretty close there. And that's too close for comfort for the goobs, for the global social engineers. That's accessible. You can almost smell it. You can almost smell the witches' bodies burning. So it's these are things I'm just playing with, but I'm just now starting to play with some of the math. And to me, the AD, if AD was really after this man died, or when he was born, and that man was born in the year 1050, that adjusts AD meanings, because that means that, because I think the Dark Ages where they buried, where, like things like 300 AD and 500 AD, and then also we kind of pick up again somewhere around the 13th century, 14th century, things start coming online again. I think basically what you do is when it looks like things went offline and things come back online, just mash them together, and you'll have roughly the same kind of chronology. You have almost enough room to put them all together there. And then you start getting into the BC stuff. And more people, like Sylvie's now has a few videos out where she's gone on expeditions. She goes out and looking at some of these ancient places. And if the disrepair of stuff that we know how, that we knew was built 200 years ago, and see the disrepair, and then you see some of these things, they don't look thousands of years old. They just do not look thousands of years old. An Angkor Wat in a rainforest where growth is ridiculous looks like it was abandoned not too very long ago, because it isn't that overgrown. And a city that had been deserted for maybe 1,000 years or so would probably be would be covered. Sylvie, Ivanova. So where you have a K, put a V, and then you'll have it. Yeah. Okay, so this will be kind of like I'm gonna be mellowing out and seeing whether anybody, Oswald. I definitely noticed that you were really, working with Raksha tonight, and that's much appreciated. Um, it's much appreciated. What else is there to say? But so anyway, and before I close it out, if anybody's been wanting to ask a question, in many ways, I notice that there isn't a lot of questions that right now what I'm hoping our conversation is doing, getting us all thinking. And then once we do some thinking, one of the products of thinking is, okay, now I have some questions. Now I'm trying to get as gee, I wonder if I could have a little part here and a little part here, maybe I could get that. And that's what's going to, the great. I mean, I forget who it was that put Miss. I think it was the Enjoy Being from New Zealand, who kind of triggered me with My Story and Mystery, and that was an eye opener, a real eye opener. Because the English language is English, Anglish, Angelish. And if you are plugged into the master narrative, if you know about the Sophianic narrative, you know who we think the angels are. And sometimes I like as much as I think Miguel Connor is all over the place. A lot of the way with his Gnostic thought, I like him, and I do love it when he says Jehovah and his angelic mafia. And that's my opinion of angels. They're Jehovah's mafia. And so let's get back to English, Anglish, Angelish. I believe English is a language that might have had some help from the angels. That makes it highly, that puts it high on the fuckery scale. So, and that's why we start seeing like the stuff hit us in the face, the mysteries and the fact that the league. I mean, I think one of the main reasons why the angels would have helped is because English was going to be the grand language for the English maritime law system, the grand, the fuckery of the seas. And then the Pope, again, who owns all the souls, so they kind of, give him his props because we want to lord over those souls, so you can have the ownership, and it was their piggybacking on the papal claim. Angels are aliens. They're, again, I mean, they play, they can bring, angels can bring humans wisdom because they got it from us. I mean, they've been around when we were real smart, before this current Patrix was built. And that's my other thing. I used, the matrix is wholesome. It's the mother. It's the Patrix, or the Paratrix, as in parasite. But Patrix rhymes with matrix, and it's much easier. It's just like when you go to say, oh, I want to get out of the matrix. No, you want out of the Patrix, and you want to return to the matrix. Remember, where did you get the matrix? From Hollywood. That should be enough said. That should be all anybody has to say, is it came out of Hollywood. Sarath, Western magic has, to me, the problem and the crisis with Western magic is it's not an earth magic, it's an alien magic. It's a hermetic. It comes from Hermes and the gods. It comes from the usurpers. It's a usurper's magical system. Taught to, and it kind of comes from the Kabbalistic system. Kabbalah is the primary archontic mystical system. And let me tell you something. I've read a couple of things. I think the Talmud is is kind of Talmud is kind of like the rabbinical Facebook in a written form. That's why, Sarah. That's why I was glad you said you wanted to speak with me. I mean, I'm watching your videos and I'm going, oh, I'd like to have a conversation with you, sir. I forgot where I was going. Yeah, for me, the way John and I might at some point finally find some time and do it. But one of the questions, I mean, I gave him one set of questions, and every single one was a non-starter for him. And then I gave him a second set of questions, and one of the things that we were going to discuss was the unwholesomeness of Western Hermetic systems, what the problem is with them. And it's not the alchemy itself. The alchemy is a language. So Gnostics can use alchemy too, because we understand it, and especially when you realize the plants made use of the archontic energies of the planets that were added to that became the solar system when the Earth was forming, and part of it was to kind of try and trap the Earth. What they basically did was they set out a whole bunch of torsion fields to mess with the anthropos on the Earth. Torsion fields, and the torsion fields would have a good cop and a bad cop aspect to them. And one of the gains of good cop and bad cop, as long as there's a good face once in a while, then it's not all bad, and it's just the way things are. Nobody's perfect. You got to take the good with the bad, turn the other cheek, and blah 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 blah, mumble mumble mumble, blah blah blah. And so because the Earth is in, she started with the sun and the moon, but we have these influences around us with the other planets in the solar system. We're in the solar torsion field, and they're doing something not just with the what we'll call, I guess you call, the gravitational impact, but they put the planets there to put their consciousness in. Basically, they saw what Sophia was doing. They go, oh, look at this, a consciousness that's going to become a planet. Well, we can try and do that, and they did try and do it, and so they managed to get their fuckeries in there. So you have Mars and war, and Saturn, and it's just timekeeping and structure and whatever, and then the bloviating Jupiter. They all have their what we consider good sides, and that's the good cop, bad cop thing. But the plants, like I'm an herbalist, and I know which planets rule the different plants, and I use it when I come up with when I put together concoctions. I also know the chemical constituents. Like I know what there are chemicals are. I know whether or not they're rubefacient or they're febrifuge or antihelmintic. I'm just using a bunch of terms, but I know that. But then there's also the alchemical energies of I might want a certain quality, and I go, oh gee, there's a Venus plant with what I want chemically, there's a Mars plant and a Jupiterian plant, and they all kind of have what I want. So given that I want a certain chemical action to interact with the chemistry, what is the other energy I might want to incorporate? Do I want to incorporate a Martian energy, a Venusian energy, a Jupiterian energy? And the reason why the plants were able to make use of these energies and not get screwed around with them is because plants don't have our psyche or our psychology. The influence of these torsion fields and the whole thing about astrology as we know it, Western astrology, is the effect the planets have on our psyches or on our the subconscious and the greater, unconscious field of the species. So that's where the fuckery occurs. Plants don't have the psychology to mess with, so whatever energies are channeling out of that, they're able to just make use of. So it is, alchemy itself is clean. Alchemy is a language. Alchemy is an understanding of our situation. It's kind of alchemy is the situational awareness and a language to map that. But all the hermetic systems come from the usurpers. I mean, I just listened last night, some of it while I was doing other things. It was 6.5 hours of part 1 of Greek mythology. And I have to tell you, the first 45 minutes was the best because it goes into the primitive stuff. And it was pretty rich. And there was a lot of little clues there because, again, I know the crime. So when you know the crime it's committed, you can hear some of the clues coming out. Okay, you know something? I don't want to restart myself. I say I'm at 2 hours and 20 minutes. To me, that's plenty of show. So anyway, thank you all for coming in. I mean, I see the numbers fluctuate, but it's been a good, strong score of people. So I can feel like we all scored. And so again, Can't You Hear Me, Gnostic happens every Monday night, and if you're on the West Coast, it happens every Monday evening. And if you're if you're over on the other side of the pond, as they say, it's 5 hours later. It's in the middle of the night. So I'd like to thank everybody who joins. I always like to thank the people with the wrenches, the moderators, for just, allowing me to be able to go and not worry that anything weird might happen or untoward or whatever. And also for your contributions. I mean, the Foxadre and Madfinger and Raksha Moose, they have things to say. They contribute in the regular chat. They banter about, and then occasionally they have some good stuff to say. So it just, I just really appreciate, because this. I'm a moderator in a few places, and it took me a while before I realized, being a moderator is like you're on a team, and it's kind of like if when the team plays, it's really helpful whenever all the team members are there. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Great love, and wisdom, and remember, we don't need more knowledge. We need wisdom. Wisdom will guide us to the knowledge that will be of utility to us. Gathering a bunch of knowledge won't necessarily bring us the wisdom. Just starting out with simple wisdom, being wise enough to know that not every piece of knowledge is of utility. It might satisfy curiosity, but as we all know, we sometimes have cravings for things that are not necessarily going to benefit us. They won't kill us, they won't hurt us, but we're in a little bit of a crunch time. Or to me, the crunch largely comes from, let's end the fuckery already. And the fuckery is in our psyches, and so we gotta just help each other get clear, get Gnostic clear, and that means to know that we're clear, to know that we've tapped into wisdom, to know that wisdom will guide us to the knowledge that will serve us all. So that's it. Let me just kind of stop that streaming. Sometimes it stops a little sooner than others. but I'm hitting stop streaming